Welcome back, everyone, to an emergency pod episode. Zach LaVine, DeAaron Fox, traded. Here's our thoughts. So just to go over the quick trade, the Spurs acquired DeAaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin. The Kings acquired Zach LaVine, City, 3 first-round picks, and we'll go into detail about which first-round picks, but specifically the 2025 from Charlotte, 2027 from San Antonio, and the 2031 from Minnesota, and then 3 second-round picks from various teams that the Kings have acquired. And then the Bulls, they get Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and they get their own 2025 pick that San Antonio held. Really key if they're going to try and tank into the next season. Obviously, 3 teams. I feel like unlike last night where the Jazz were kind of a throw-in team, all of these teams have clear things that they gain from this specific trade and clear vantage points that they're looking to do. So I wanted to start off with the big piece from that the Spurs are getting with DeAaron Fox. So let's kind of go back into history and understand what's going on here. So SpotTrack already has it updated as of now. But essentially the Kings knew that DeAaron Fox's season wasn't going to get all NBA. And his 10th year would have been this $37 million year deal where he'd be eligible to sign the Supermax. And that means in the NBA essentially that year, in the 2024-2025 year, going in the 2025-2026 year, next year, he would be able to be paid more by the Kings than anyone else. And so the Kings offered him an extension this last summer, and that extension was rejected just because obviously DeAaron Fox thought, hey, I can sign a bigger deal if I potentially get the Supermax and make all NBA. He's not going to make all NBA this year, it seems like. He's not one of the best, 12, I'd say 6 guards in the league in the Western Conference by pretty large margin, to be honest. And him making the Supermax is probably not something even the Spurs would want to do. So at this point, the Kings can pay him just as much as every other team in unrestricted free agency in that 2026 to 2027 season. So what that means is their asset is basically a ticking time bomb because they don't know if DeAaron Fox is going to play for them, and he's worth a lot. I mean, clearly he's worth more than nothing. So they basically were forced to essentially try and shop him at this point. I think DeAaron Fox would have been happy staying until 2025, 2026. He likes the team. He played well. It's not like a Jimmy Butler type situation, but they had to trade him because you can't let an asset like this sit on your team as a ticking time bomb if you don't feel like you have a great chance at re-signing them, which honestly the Kings just didn't have with DeAaron Fox. So now he goes and joins Wemby. Now, what did they trade though to get them? Just to go back to it. So the Spurs basically give up what is basically a package of essentially picks, 3 first-round picks, which we're going to break down. So the 2025 from Charlotte is a first-round pick for now. But looking through some of the history and some of the research I've done, this 2025 first-round pick from Charlotte that they acquired via the Spurs is top 14 protected. And we all know how bad Charlotte is this year. And if it doesn't convey this year, next year it will actually be like 2 second-round picks or a second-round pick, which is basically saying that this pick is a second-round pick. So they really only got 2 first-round picks. The 2027 from San Antonio, I think that quality of that pick is not super great just because you look at Wemby and DeAaron Fox arguably on the same team, Wemby continuing to get better. It's likely not going to be in the lottery, which is really where you need it to be to get that high impact type player. The 2031 from Minnesota, I mean, who knows? That could be a better pick. But essentially 1.5 quality picks, I would say, from this trade for DeAaron Fox. Now, I think they probably couldn't extract any more value maybe just because they knew that DeAaron Fox and the whole league knew that DeAaron Fox wanted to go to the Spurs, and that was his one option. And they knew that this is once again a ticking time bomb, and everyone knows that if he doesn't sign an extension with your team, you're essentially wasting any asset that you give. So by DeAaron Fox kind of quietly going about his business, really pushing towards one team, I think it made it clear to everyone else in the NBA that, that's what was going to happen in the end. Now we look at the Kings side. So they get Zach LaVine in this trade. And I think that's a huge move for them. We're going to look at Zach LaVine's contract real fast. He's really been an impact player for the Chicago Bulls this season. He's been playing much better, shooting over 40% from 3, over 50% from the field, almost 90% from the free throw line. And he's been a really great player. And the Kings wanted to stay competitive. I think the Kings know that as a franchise, they're just not the most desirable place. And being a competitive team in that type of market is good enough for them. Championship is not necessarily always on their mind. Because I think, to be honest, to really maximize this trade, they probably should have just gone all in with the picks. But instead, what they decided to do is, okay, hey, let's get a more competitive player. Obviously, terrible contract. But if he plays like this, like he has this year into the future, definitely a competitive player. He makes $43 million this year, makes $45 million the year after that, then 48, pretty much like a max extension contract. Probably not a max player, to be honest, but somebody you're going to have to pay the max because he already signed it. A big part of the salary cap as well. But definitely a player, I think, if he doesn't get injured, that could be competitive, could let the Kings be competitive, especially with Sabonis. They do trade away Herter in this deal and some of the other kind of ancillary pieces. But I think with Keegan Murray, Sabonis, and Zach LaVine, they're really hoping to kind of instill some magic and maybe make the playoffs, which I think is good. I think it's a good angle for the Kings, but overall, I'm just really disappointed with the picks they got. I think they lost the deal in terms of the picks they got just because they're not that good. Maybe the 1.5 picks that they get is good, and second round picks honestly don't matter. They could have got them through a lot of other ways. And then the Bulls, I think they're the last team. They get off the Zach LaVine contract. I feel like they could have gotten more from someone like the Warriors, but this 2025 pick that San Antonio held of theirs was definitely the barn burner here, the one that got them to make this trade, because now they can tank. Now they can say this season is over, we can tank, and I expect a Vucevic deal to be incoming soon if they can get any value from him. Kind of strip it down to its studs. Kobe White, that's pretty much all we want to keep. If Pat Williams is available, they'll trade him. Basically, the Bulls are saying, hey, we're finally going to tank. I think this is the sign that the Bulls fans probably needed. They're probably honestly relieved to get Zach LaVine off the team and finally have a direction to where they can maybe compete in the future, start a rebuild that's really been going on since Michael Jordan, and really since Derrick Rose's huge ankle injury in 2001. So I think in terms of direction, all three franchises have a direction. The Kings are basically content with being mid. The Spurs basically got the best deal they could, I think, for DeAaron Fox, didn't give up too much. And the Bulls finally can tank. And I think that's really the takeaway for me. If I had to say who won this deal, I think the Spurs won this deal before the deal even happened, just because De'Aaron Fox made it pretty clear to everyone, without explicitly saying it, that he wanted to go to the Spurs and that essentially he wouldn't sign a contract extension with anybody else. So overall, I think this was just a great trade. It's fun to see so much action happening in the NBA. If you love these emergency pods or have any ideas on what we should do in the future, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Thank you guys for watching.